What truly happens when you die? Is it the end, a complete darkness swallowing every thought, every memory? Or is it something far more mysterious, a tunnel of light pulling you into a new reality? A silence so deep it feels like eternity. Or perhaps the beginning of something profoundly beautiful. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychological minds of all time, faced this question not as an abstract idea, but as a lived experience. During a near-death experience, Jung found himself standing at the threshold of existence. And what he saw forever changed the way he viewed life, death, and the soul's journey. Jung described death not as an end, but as a passage. He believed that the soul does not simply vanish, it continues transformed, shaped by everything we have lived, every choice we have made, every part of our inner world that we've explored or ignored. For Jung, our spiritual growth, our willingness to face our shadow and embrace the wholeness of who we are, determines what we become when this life is over. This idea is both comforting and challenging. Comforting because death is not a void, but a continuation. Challenging because it forces us to look at how we live now. Are we truly awake? Are we living in alignment with our deepest self? Or are we avoiding the truths that matter most? Jung's near-death revelations weren't just philosophical musings. He felt with absolute clarity that the soul is eternal, that it carries forward the essence of our being, and that the afterlife is not random, but deeply connected to the life we lead here and now. So what happens when we die? Perhaps the better question is, how are you living? Because according to Jung, the afterlife is not simply waiting for us. It's already taking shape through the choices we make, the love we give, and the depth with which we face ourselves in this moment. If you've ever wondered what lies beyond the veil of life, Jung's insights offer not just an answer, but a revelation, a call to live fully now, so that when death comes, it is not an ending, but a return to the deepest truth of who we are. In 1944, after suffering a massive heart attack, Carl Jung found himself crossing a threshold few ever return from. What he experienced in those moments was not just a brush with death, it was a journey into a realm that defied time-space and all earthly understanding. Jung later described this moment as entering a timeless, spaceless state. He felt as if the weight of the physical world had dissolved, and he was no longer bound by the body or the senses. Instead, he became pure awareness, free, unshackled, and more alive than ever. From this state, Jung saw something extraordinary. He wrote about looking down at the earth from far above, as if he had transcended the boundaries of life itself. The planet below him seemed distant and small, like a memory of something once important, but now far away. Then, in the vastness of the cosmos, he saw it a massive, majestic temple floating like an island of light in the endless darkness of space. This temple was unlike anything he had ever imagined. It wasn't just a building, but a symbol of profound meaning. Jung felt that this structure represented the eternal, the ultimate reality that exists beyond life and death. The atmosphere around it was filled with peace, a peace so complete and liberating that it made ordinary life feel like a pale dream in comparison. In his writings, Jung confessed that this experience felt more real than waking life. He sensed that everything he had ever known, his achievements, his identity, his fears, had all fallen away like shadows. He was no longer Carl Jung, the famed psychologist. He was something deeper, something eternal, just a point of awareness, a soul. Jung described this state as a kind of spiritual homecoming. He felt no fear, no pain, no longing. Only the profound clarity of being part of something infinite. Time didn't exist there. Space didn't exist. There was only consciousness and the quiet knowing that the soul continues beyond and the limits of the body. But as much as he wanted to remain in that state, something pulled him back. His near-death experience was not meant to be a final departure, but a revelation, a glimpse of what lies beyond the veil of life. Jung returned to his body forever changed. He carried with him the conviction that what we experience after death is not an ending, but a transformation. This profound journey influenced much of Jung's later work. He believed that our inner life, the shadow we face, the wholeness we embrace, shapes what happens when we cross into that other realm. For Jung, the afterlife wasn't a vague promise or a fearful unknown. It was a reality one he had briefly touched. What Jung experienced challenges us to rethink life itself. If death is not the end, but a passage into something greater, how should we live today? Are we preparing our soul for that moment? Are we living authentically in alignment with who we truly are? Perhaps Jung's vision of the floating temple is a reminder that the ultimate journey is not about escaping life, but about awakening within it. Because when all else falls away, what remains is not our name, our status, or our possessions. It's the awareness of who we truly are. Carl Jung, one of the most profound minds in psychology, once had a near-death experience so powerful that it shattered everything he thought he knew about life and death. After a heart attack in 1944, Jung found himself in a state beyond the physical, a place where time, space, and identity seemed to dissolve. He saw the earth far below him, a fragile blue sphere suspended in the infinite blackness of space. But what truly shook him was the vision of a massive, radiant temple floating in the cosmos. This temple was unlike anything he had seen before. It seemed to pulse with divine energy, as if it were alive, an eternal sanctuary, standing at the edge of existence. For Jung, this was not just a structure, but a symbol of something far greater, something beyond the reach of ordinary human understanding. It was, in his words, more real than waking life, filled with a sense of peace and liberation so deep that he felt every worry, every fear, every part of his earthly identity fall away. Yet as Jung approached the temple, something stopped him. He wasn't allowed to enter. He later wrote that he felt a powerful presence, a knowing force that told him, "You are not ready." It was as if the universe itself had spoken. This moment was not meant to be his crossing. It was a glimpse, a message, a preparation for something beyond. Jung interpreted this experience with his unique psychological lens. He believed the temple represented the self, not the ego-driven personality we show the world, but the divine, eternal essence within each of us. To him, this self is the ultimate truth of who we are, the part of our soul that transcends time, death, and the illusions of the material world. For Jung, the afterlife wasn't a place filled with golden streets or eternal punishment. It wasn't even a physical location at all. Instead, he came to see the afterlife as a state of soul integration. It is the moment when all parts of our being, the conscious, the unconscious, the shadow and the light, come together as one. Death in this view isn't an end, but a return to wholeness. This insight challenges us to rethink how we live our lives. If what awaits us is a state of complete integration, then the work we do on ourselves now, or the inner healing, the self-discovery, the courage to face our shadows, shapes the journey our soul will take after death. Jung's vision wasn't just about dying. It was about living authentically and meaningfully, so that when the time comes, our soul is ready to enter that temple of wholeness. He often emphasized that life is a preparation for this great transition. Every struggle, every transformation, and every step toward understanding our true nature is like laying the foundation for the soul's next chapter. In this way, The temple he saw wasn't only about the afterlife. It was also a mirror showing him the parts of himself he still needed to reconcile before he could fully transcend. This near-death experience profoundly shaped Jung's teachings. He came back from that threshold with a message: death is not to be feared, but to be understood. It is a passage to something more real, more eternal, and more integrated than anything we know here. So what can we learn from Jung's vision? Perhaps that the key to preparing for death lies in embracing life, fully exploring our inner world, facing our shadows, and becoming whole. Because, as Jung discovered, the afterlife is not a distant place. It is a state of being that we are already shaping moment by moment with how we live right now. What truly happens when we take our final breath? Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists in history, believed that death is not the end of who we are. It is simply the end of the ego. The ego is everything we believe ourselves to be our name. Our identity, our achievements, our roles, our fears, and our attachments. It's the mask we wear to navigate life, the personality we've constructed to survive and belong. But according to Jung, at the moment of death, all of that falls away. The ego, so loud, so fragile, so desperate to hold on, dissolves. And what remains? The self. For Jung, the self is not just the individual me that lives within the boundaries of a single lifetime. The self is something far greater, a deeper, eternal consciousness that is rooted in the collective unconscious. It is the part of us that transcends time, culture, and personal history. It is the essence of the soul, the part that existed before we were born and continues after we die. Jung once described this moment with striking words: the ego dies at a screaming. The self watches in silence. This means that the part of us that is afraid, the part that clings to control and identity, will resist death. It will struggle. But the self, that quiet, eternal witness within us, remains untouched. It simply observes, as it has always observed, beyond fear, beyond suffering, beyond death itself. To Jung, this understanding of death wasn't just abstract philosophy. It was the result of his own near-death experience in 1944, when he described leaving his body and entering a timeless, spaceless state of pure awareness. In that moment, he felt the ego's grip slip away, replaced by a profound sense of liberation and clarity. This insight changes how we look at life itself. If our ego is temporary, but our self is eternal, then life is not about clinging to an identity, it's about discovering the deeper consciousness that lies beneath it. Jung believed that the great task of life is to integrate all parts of ourselves, our shadow, our wounds, our unconscious patterns, so that we can reconnect with the self before death strips everything else away. When we live only for the ego, we live in fear, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of death itself. But when we connect with the self, we begin to experience a profound sense of peace. Death then is not a terrifying end, but a return to the wholeness that has always been there, silently waiting. This perspective asks us to reflect: are we living as our ego or as our self? Are we trapped by our titles, our possessions, our roles, or are we nurturing the eternal part of us, the consciousness that will remain when all else fades? Jung's teaching is clear. Life is not just about survival or success. It is about awakening. The ego will one day die screaming, but the self will remain still, unshaken, infinite. And if we spend our lives connecting with that deeper self, death will no longer feel like an enemy, but like a final homecoming. So when you think of death, remember Jung's words. The ego will dissolve, but the self, your true eternal essence, will watch in silence, ready to continue its journey beyond this life. Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century, believed that death is not the end, but a transition into a symbolic realm, a spiritual dimension shaped by the contents of our own unconscious mind. According to Jung, when we die, we don't encounter angels or demons, as many religious traditions describe. Instead, the soul enters a world composed of archetypes, primordial images, buried deep within the collective unconscious existing beyond time and culture. These archetypes are not mere figments of imagination. They are symbols of profound spiritual forces that shape the soul's journey after death. In this realm, we may encounter the wise old man, a figure representing deep wisdom and illumination. This archetype often appears as a teacher or guide, helping the soul find answers and navigate the unknown transition between life and the afterlife. We may also face the shadow, the darkest and most hidden aspects of our psyche. The shadow is not an enemy, but a test. It forces the soul to confront fears, denials, and the rejected parts of itself. Jung believed that encountering the shadow after death is a critical step toward achieving wholeness. Then there is the divine child, an archetype of rebirth, purity, and infinite potential. The divine child brings the soul a sense of renewal and reminds us that our truest essence is rooted in innocence, creativity, and spiritual potential. It is also the symbol of new beginnings, even as we cross into a reality beyond physical life. Finally, there is the Great Mother, an image both nurturing and challenging. The Great Mother may appear as a comforting protective force, or as an energy that compels us to release all attachments to the material world. She represents both rebirth and dissolution, the return of the soul to the vastness of the universe. For Jung, these archetypes do not exist as separate entities, but as mirrors reflecting the state of the soul. They appear to guide, test, and reveal the condition of our inner being. Each individual's experience in this realm will be different depending on their life journey, their inner development, and how deeply they have accepted the truth of who they are. This understanding raises a profound question. Are we preparing for that journey? Jung emphasized that the real work of life is to face ourselves, to confront the shadow, seek wisdom, nurture the divine child within, and learn to harmonize with the Great Mother. In a way, life itself is a training ground for the symbolic realm the soul will enter after death. Jung's view of death is neither frightening nor final. It is not about external judgment or eternal punishment. Rather, it is about meeting the deepest parts of our own psyche. Death becomes not an ending, but a mirror reflecting all that we have become. This perspective invites us to live with greater awareness, to do the inner work that prepares the soul for its next chapter. If death is a symbolic return to the self, to the eternal patterns and truths that exist beyond our temporary identity, then every choice we make now is shaping that final encounter. Life, as Jung saw it, is not just about survival or success. It is about integration, weaving together the conscious and unconscious, the light and shadow, the masculine and feminine, the mortal and the eternal. The archetypes we meet after death are simply reflections of how fully we have embraced this integration while we were alive. So what happens after death? According to Jung, we enter a world where our inner symbols come alive, where the wise old man, the shadow, the divine child, and the Great Mother appear not as myths, but as profound realities of the soul. And the question remains, are we ready to meet them? Carl Jung, one of the most influential minds in modern psychology, devoted his life to understanding the depths of the human soul. At the core of his teachings lies the concept of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming whole, of integrating every part of ourselves, both light and shadow, into a unified self. But Jung believed that individuation doesn't end with life itself. In fact, he saw death as the final and ultimate act of individuation. At that moment, all the false layers we have carried, the ego, the masks we wear, our roles, our fears, and our attachments, fall away. What remains is not the constructed identity, but the essence of the soul standing face to face with its true nature. Throughout life, we spend years building identities, being someone's child, someone's parent, someone's partner, someone's colleague. We attach ourselves to achievements, titles, and possessions. While these may shape our experiences, Jung argued they are not our true self. They are fragments, temporary layers. Individuation is the process of peeling away these illusions, reconciling with our unconscious, and meeting the full depth of who we are. In this sense, death is not the enemy, but a revelation. It is the great moment when everything that is false or temporary is stripped away, and we merge with the wholeness of the self, our eternal and unshakable core. Jung once wrote that death is not a tragedy, but a natural and meaningful transition. It is the soul's return to its original source, free from the ego's illusions. Imagine the moment of passing not as darkness or fear, but as clarity. Every mask you've worn falls away. There is no need to pretend, no need to control. There is only truth, your soul pure and whole, meeting itself for the first time, without distortion. Jung believed this is the final chapter of individuation, the culmination of everything we've lived and learned. This perspective changes how we live. If death is the final unveiling of our true nature, then life is our preparation. Each challenge, each relationship, and each moment of self-discovery becomes part of this larger journey toward wholeness. When we confront our shadow, heal old wounds, and connect with our inner truth, we are doing the work of individuation, not just for this life, but for the soul's eternal journey. Jung often emphasized that the greatest task of life is not to chase perfection or success, but to embrace integration. To be whole means to welcome every part of ourselves, the light and the dark, the joy and the pain, the conscious and the unconscious. Only then can we face death without fear, because we know that when the false layers fall away, nothing essential is lost. In fact, Jung believed that the soul carries forward the essence of all the work we have done in life. Every act of self-awareness, every step toward authenticity, becomes part of the self that transcends death. This is why, for Jung, living consciously and fully is the most powerful preparation for dying. When we avoid the inner journey, we risk reaching the end of life, still clinging to illusions, identities that will inevitably dissolve. But when we live with the intention of individuation, death is no longer a terrifying unknown. It becomes the moment of ultimate liberation, the point where the soul finally meets its true face. Jung's vision invites us to ask deep questions. Are we living authentically, or are we trapped in roles that don't reflect our true nature? Are we confronting the parts of ourselves we'd rather avoid, or are we hiding behind the ego? Because in the end, all of these masks will fall away, and what remains ourself is what we have been shaping all along. Death, as Jung saw it, is not the end of individuation, but its final act. It is the moment of completion, when all the fragments of our being come together in unity. And perhaps this is the greatest gift of his teaching, to remind us that life and death are not opposites, but part of the same journey toward wholeness. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, believed that our inner world, the shadows we avoid, the wounds we refuse to heal, doesn't simply vanish when we die. He hinted that unresolved psychological wounds may carry beyond death, not as a form of punishment, but as unfinished soul work. In Jung's view, life is not just about external accomplishments. It's a sacred journey of integration, What we fail to confront in life, we may be forced to carry into what comes next. To Jung, the soul's journey is far deeper than a single lifetime. Our unresolved pain, our denied emotions, and the parts of ourselves we hide away, what he called the shadow, are not erased at the moment of death. Instead, they remain as unprocessed energy waiting to be acknowledged. He suggested that the afterlife is not just a realm of peace, but also a place where the soul continues its work, facing the truths it avoided while alive. This idea isn't meant to scare us, but to empower us. It means that the inner healing we do now, our willingness to face our fears, confront our wounds, and embrace our authentic self, has eternal significance. Every step toward self-awareness and healing shapes not only the quality of our present life, but also the state of the soul after death. Jung's philosophy of individuation and the process of becoming whole is deeply tied to this belief. Individuation means confronting the unconscious, integrating the shadow, and acknowledging all aspects of our being, the light and the dark. When we avoid this process, we risk leaving parts of our soul fragmented and unresolved. These are the aspects of ourselves that may follow us beyond this life, not as a curse, but as work still waiting to be done. He often emphasized that life is like a classroom for the soul. Every challenge, every relationship, and every wound offers us an opportunity to learn and grow. But if we refuse to learn, if we numb ourselves, hide from our pain, or live only on the surface, then we may arrive at death with lessons unlearned. In this sense, the afterlife is not a place of judgment, but a continuation of the soul's evolution. This perspective calls for a different way of living. Instead of running from discomfort, Jung's teaching invites us to turn inward and face the parts of ourselves we fear the most. That heartbreak you never processed, that anger you keep buried, that dream you've abandoned, these are not just passing emotions. They are keys to your deeper growth. By confronting them now, you free your soul from carrying this unfinished business into whatever lies beyond. Jung believed that healing is not linear, and it's never too late to start. Even in the final chapters of life, moments of self-reflection, forgiveness, and inner reconciliation can bring profound peace, not just for this life, but for the journey of the soul. So what does this mean for us? It means that the work we do within ourselves, our healing, our self-awareness, our courage to face pain, matters more than we realize. It shapes not just who we are today, but who we become after death. It determines whether we cross over feeling whole or fragmented at peace, or still searching. Imagine arriving at the threshold of death and feeling complete, knowing that you have faced your fears, healed your wounds, and embraced the truth of who you are. Jung believed this is possible, but it requires courage in this life. It requires us to stop hiding behind distractions and begin the deep work of self-discovery. Jung's message is clear: what we don't face now we may carry with us into the next realm. But this is not a threat. It is an invitation. Life is giving us a chance right here and now to do the work, to integrate, to forgive, to become whole. And when we do, death is no longer something to fear, but simply the next step in the soul's ongoing evolution. So what truly happens after death? To Carl Jung, it's not fire, nor harp-filled heavens, nor the stories of eternal punishment or reward we've been told. Instead, Jung believed death is a return to the self, to the source, to a truth far deeper and more profound than anything we've lived. It is a homecoming to the essence of who we are, stripped of all illusions, masks, and fears. But here's the part that changes everything. That truth, what we meet after death, is shaped by how deeply we dare to live now. Every moment of authenticity, every time we faced our shadow, every choice to live consciously and with courage, all of it forms the state of our soul when the final moment comes. Maybe death isn't something to fear, but something to prepare for. Not by obsessing over the end, but by living fully embracing life in its raw beauty and challenges. Jung's vision is a reminder that we are not here just to survive or achieve. We are here to awaken, to live so fully and consciously that when death comes, we don't run, we remember. We remember that the self, the eternal part of us, is untouched by time or endings. We remember that what awaits is not darkness, but truth. What part of Jung's vision moved you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let your soul speak. And if you seek meaning beyond the visible, subscribe, because the journey of the soul doesn't end here. It's only just beginning.